we're delighted to welcome Professor DeWitt, has had a very high profile in the environmental movement on both sides of the Atlantic and many other countries over the past few decades. He is, of course, President Emeritus and indeed founder of the Unsustainable Institute of Environmental Studies in the States, is now based here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm not going to take any more of his time of reading out his impressive and highly influential bio, but simply invite Cal to come up now and speak to us on the whole topic of unsustainable agriculture and land use. Thank you very much, Cal.
It's a pleasure to be at this very important conference and work with the rest of the speakers and join with all of you in addressing the root causes of unsustainability. What I have done over the last several weeks in preparation, in fact over several months, is to take an area I know very well, and that is the use of land for crops, for human endeavors, and also in relationship to the structure of the whole biosphere. And I've used this as an occasion to explore more deeply than I have before the root causes of unsustainability. I have come early, some years ago already, to the issues of arrogance, ignorance, and greed as really very basic. And my students at the University of Wisconsin in my environmental science class each year come up with those same three terms when we're looking for root causes. But what I'm doing today is digging more deeply than that, and I'm quite excited to convey to you what I have found, because as a scientist, I'm always working to discover, and I'm going to share with you what I think are discoveries today. This is the basic material you were supplied with on the poster, and my talk is Unsustainability of Agriculture and Land Use. I've explored for various indicators of unsustainability, and Sir John Houghton and Jim McCarthy have already added some of these in the area of climate. But let me add three more. The nearly 1/3 of the arable lands worldwide that were lost to erosion during the last half of the century have also been taken out of production. What is clear here is that not only is eroded land continuing to take place, it is at the rate still of about 21 million acres per year, but these lands are also taken out of production completely. 2, an annual average rate of soil loss in tons per acre. These are 2,000 pound tons. They're very close to the metric ton of 2,200 pounds. So you can kind of think the same for each of these as an approximation. The annual average rate of loss is about 14 per year in Asia, Africa, and South America, 7 in the US and Europe, and this compares with an annual soil formation rate of about 0.4 tons per acre. This clearly is an indicator of unsustainability. And then 3, information coming from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which is the first international work by scientists to come to grips with the status of the biosphere and its ecosystems, of 24 ecosystem services that the scientists there have identified that have enough data to actually analyze. They find that 15 of these 24 are being degraded or used unsustainably, approximately 60%. These are the reports that Sir John and Jim McCarthy have participated in producing. Just as a reminder, and what has come from this IPCC report from the Millennium Assessment Group is this statement made by the MEA board in 2005. Human activity is putting such strain on the natural functions of Earth that the ability of the planet's ecosystems to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. Protection of these assets can no longer be seen as an optional extra to be considered once more pressing concerns such as wealth creation or national security have been dealt with. Healthy ecosystems are central to the aspirations of humankind. I was very pleased to find research done by Professor Jules Petty and his colleagues at the University of Essex here in the UK. What he has done and what his department has done, along with a number of his students, is to attempt to find how the world would look if we would actually put into place sustainable agriculture. He was not able to define sustainable agriculture as it occurred in the agricultural world, because there are many different standards for this, but he was able to take the definition of organic agriculture as used in the UK and assume that organic agriculture is more in the direction of sustainability than current industrial agriculture. And so what we see here in this table is that the actual costs from current agriculture, given here in a million pounds per year, are compare left to right with industrial agriculture or conventional agriculture and organic as follows. Pesticides in water, these are millions of pounds, I'll just say the number rounded off, 143 to 0. Nitrate and cryptosporidium in water, 112 to 53.7. Eutrophication of surface water, 79 to 20. Monitoring of water will skip. Methane, 421 to 172. Direct and indirect carbon emissions, 102 to 32. Off-site erosion and organic matter losses from soils, 59 to 24. Losses of biodiversity, 150 to 19. Adverse effects to human health from pesticides, 1.2 to 0. And adverse effects to human health from microorganisms and BSE, 432 to 50. This is for, I think it's 1,188 organic farms compared with averages of conventional agriculture across the UK. It's clear that there is the capacity to produce a sustainable or a much more sustainable agriculture, but in fact, most of the agriculture is unsustainable. It is encouraging that there are this many farms already in the UK that have taken up this movement called organic farming, but this is at this point a strong movement, but it is not sufficient, and it's only at its beginning. To make this matter more personal, I've picked up a statement by Tony Enns, who is a Wisconsin sustainable agriculturalist and farmer, and he's a person that's probably 65 or 68 years old and has been experiencing farming in the Midwest, particularly in Illinois, during his lifetime, and this is what he would like us to reflect with him. There were 89,000 more farmers on the land in Illinois when I was 4 years old. There were trees and flowering shrubs among many of the roadsides. There were small orchards, berry patches, and vegetable gardens in the farmyards. There was livestock visible in the pastures. Almost every vestige of that world has been swept away with those 89,000 farms, and with them a rich culture, healthy communities, and vibrant rural economies. Most of the barnyards that remain are silent, empty islands and oceans of bare ground, crop residue or stubble which lap up against the very sides of dilapidated buildings. We can live our faith in such, how can we live our faith in such a setting, knowing what our created world and its nurturing spiritual qualities looked like such a short time ago? Alva Leopold makes similar statements in his Land Ethic and Sand County Almanac. I think we have, we're out of sync on the 2 slides. What I'll do here, we'll just see, oh, there he is. I'm showing the picture of Michael Polanyi, who was a professor here in the UK at the University of Manchester, and who in 1968 produced a remarkable paper published in Science, the journal of the organization that Jim McCarthy is president of, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In this journal and in this article, he described how systems work, and I should say he was a professor of physical chemistry as well as a professor of social science because of his broadening out his interests and expertise go beyond the bounds of chemistry. And what he does in this article is to describe how every system in the world can be looked at as being part of a hierarchical arrangement. For example, cells are parts of liver tissue, which are parts of liver organisms, which are part of whole organisms, which are part of human communities or animal and plant communities, which are part of the biosphere. And what he says is that each of these systems, whether this be a cell or an organelle like a mitochondrion, each of these systems has its own internal controls. But above each of these systems, there is a controlling system of which it's a part. So a molecule in a rock is perhaps controlled by certain things intrinsic to that molecule, but it is controlled by a higher level of the mineral of which it's a part, which is controlled by the rock of which it's part, which is controlled by the mountain range and the tectonic plates of which it's a part. So this is the idea. What he shows is that as we structure our universities and colleges and various enterprises, is that we tend to say all other things being equal, which means we don't look at the higher levels of control, but we look at the mitochondrion we're studying, the energy relationships of the cells, which allow us to think of cell biology. And I remember my professor once, who was, when I was a graduate student, talking about in the mammal we see this, in the mammal we see this, and I asked him after class, what do you mean when you say the mammal? He said, I mean the white rat, of course. And I said, oh, you work with white rats? He said, no, I work with rat liver mitochondria. And I said, well, then you have to work with livers. He says, no, I have the mitochondria delivered to me each day to my laboratory. This is true. This is Jim Allen, a pretty prominent cell physiologist. He was disjoint from the liver because he was so focusing on the mitochondria, which is a very, very important way of research. This capacity that we have to reduce things to smaller and smaller pieces, to look at them with all of the things being equal, has given us immense advance in many fields. But it has a consequence. And the consequence here is, the consequence here is that we begin to see things independently in such ways that we don't look at the broader context. I'm showing here an illustration from William Blake. He doesn't use this in his great epic piece, Jerusalem, but he describes it. And what he's describing in his epic, Jerusalem, is that the new economy, the industrial economy about which he's commenting, has moved the little circle here, the little wheel, outside of the big wheel. In other words, what he's saying is that the little economy, which is the human economy, we have presumptively moved outside, and we're presuming that that little economy runs itself. And what he is saying in his great poem is that when you do that, they move in opposite directions. And what has to happen, as he comments about the pollution in London and with the slavery that people are engaged in industrial production, is we have to move the little wheel back inside the bigger wheel, not looking at it as independent, but part of the larger system. And one of our key challenges, I think, using Polanyi's analysis, is to reinsert our human economy into creation's economy, or the economy of the biosphere. I was on a program, three of us spoke in northwestern Canada, in western Canada. A member of Parliament, past member of Parliament, the immediate past president of Shell Canada, and me, an environmental scientist. And what we were doing in a series of alternating presentations was to deal with the question of the production of energy and gasoline from the Alberta tar sands. And what I was interested to discover was that the former president of Shell Canada said that they were eventually going to become carbon neutral. And when I asked him what he meant by that, he said, well, at this point they use a lot of natural gas to produce the oil from the tar sands, and eventually they will not be using a net amount of energy, to produce that because of technology. And I said, well, but how about when the oil then is consumed by the cars? And he said, well, that's another matter. That's outside of our jurisdiction. So I wondered, how could I do something at this meeting? It was a very, it was a marvelous meeting with lots of people present because of these two important people there. And so I told the story of my son, and I hope this doesn't take too much time, because what happened is I think it turned around the member of Parliament and turned around the CEO of Shell Canada. The story is this: my son, when he was 5, found he could sell oranges at the end of our drive, at the end of our country road, and he sold them for 10 cents a piece. And he sold 10 and 20 and 30. Soon he had amassed $5. And what happened is that he came back to the refrigerator, picked up more oranges, and went out and sold them again. And soon he had $15. And my wife finally said to me, maybe you have to talk with Gary. So I sat down with Gary and told him of the larger economy, of which his smaller economy was part, and that on average we paid 20 cents per orange, and that on the whole this didn't make sense. Interestingly, I got through to the former president of Shell Canada with this argument. They did not argue that my son didn't do this, and they were just left rather speechless, because I was really talking about Shell Canada. We have suffered from fragmentation and secularization of knowledge. We have done that here at Cambridge. We've done it at Oxford. We've done it at my university. We've done it across all of academia. We have fragmented this not only in the universities and in our research institutes, but this has been picked up by the places we populate once we graduate. And I'd like to just point out here a difference between BP and ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil was still in the petroleum business, and BP is now the world's largest producer of solar panels. BP decided to get into the energy business, and ExxonMobil is still in the petroleum business. What's the larger context of petroleum? Energy. Fragmentation can be addressed. Shell Canada and the Alberta sands show that maintenance of that mentality of separation. And then it was just a couple of days ago, there was a headline in the New York Times entitled, "Food is Gold." And they discussed a firm, an investment firm here in the UK called the Emergent Assets Management. And what they're doing, and several other companies are doing as well, is they're saying hunger and food is the next big investment area, and land in the Sahel is worth only it costs only 1/6 of what it costs in Argentina, and land in the UK is still relatively cheap. We will buy land as a hedge and as an investment because land is food. And what they're going to do, and what they're going to, if you look at their investment prospectus, which you're not supposed to talk about, but you can just call it down, you'll discover that what they're going to do is to take up land that is occupied by indigenous farmers, and because those farmers are paying far too less for that land, and and it should really have a higher price. Renee Padilla is going to deal with this somewhat later in Argentina. But food is gold is a reductionism, which is denying the land of its stewards and replacing them with investors in commodities. So I've studied a lot, and you might want to write down this name, Daniel W. Brownlee, who has analyzed this as an economist, as an institutional and agricultural economist, to show that this is unsustainable economically as well. And then secularization of knowledge, which is also a problem which has come through our universities. Theology and related things like the study of Scripture has been relegated in most institutions to seminaries, and by all means they're not allowed to be anything but the department if they remain in the university. So fragmentation and secularization are extremely powerful and important here. What I wanted to do is to identify that fragmentation is identified by Daniel Brownlee as having taken place around the years 1890 to 1910 by separating economics from politics. Richard T. Ely, who was one of the leading economists at that time and who founded the American Economic Association, he and others at that time, such as John R. Commons, held politics and economics together. In fact, they didn't call them different things. And what Brownlee shows is that since we've now separated economics from politics, what we've done is we've allowed economics to drive politics, and they really have to be reintegrated. I have also dealt here in my analysis, and this is something I think might be new. You know, you always hope that maybe you're discovering new things just because it's fun. But this has to do with the secularization of law. I suspected there was a problem here because when I wrote about the law of the sea in the 70s, I was in correspondence and communication with lawyers and law professors at the University of Wisconsin. And one of them said to me, "My, it's remarkable you're dealing with questions of what is just versus what is legal." And I said, "Yes, that's true." And he said, "Well, our courts are increasingly moving from courts of justice to courts of law. And when you have a court of law, you determine whether something's legal. And then, if it is legal, you can do things that are unjust." And so I thought, in preparation for this, I would look up an old friend of mine who lived 400 years ago. I've become acquainted with him because he was called the Miracle of Holland when he was 16, at which time he had his PhD already. And he had learned Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and many other languages, and was an immensely competent scholar. And one of the things I was particularly intrigued about Hugo Grotius was that he was jailed because of theological disputes, and his wife delivered him a whole box of books once a week in jail. And one day, when she came to pick up the old box and bring a new, he crawled into the box and he was exported as books. He is the father of international law. He is the Grotius Huig, or Hugo von Groot, or Hugo de Groot, is renowned as being the father of international law. His book on the law of the sea and his book on war and peace are still standard works in law, and they are referenced in every one of our law books. But interestingly, in recent years, in books of international law, he is credited by 4 major books as the one who separated law from theology and put it simply on the terms of natural law. This is what's claimed, and the person who's doing this research is William P. George of Dominican University in Illinois, who's contributing to this understanding the divestiture of international law from ethics, theology, and philosophy. So here's the course of my discovery. I think you'll just find it fun to go through. 1, human society. I'm going to follow 10 points here of uncovering. In fact, it struck me last night. I think it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I finally decided I was going to take a shower because I was on Wisconsin time. And it was in the shower this whole sequence came together. I had pieces of it. And of course it may turn out not to be very important, but here's the drop. 10 points. Human society recognizes the need for operating under law and has done so since antiquity. 2, as human community became global, the law of nation states no longer was sufficient. And so we learn from Spanish theologian and jurist Francisco Suarez in 1612, I got this quote last night off the internet, the reason of this law is that the human race, though divided into many people and countries, has a certain political and moral unity. However complete in itself any state may be, it is yet a member of one universal body, for no nation is so sufficient unto itself that it needs no aid, no society, and communion of the rest. Therefore the nations need a law, that they may have the right government and order in their communion and society. And interestingly, he's largely here referring to the law, the international law, that Grotius had written about a century earlier. 3, theologians and jurists, Hugo Grotius, the father of international law, broadened the scope of law globally in his Mare Liberum, the Free Seas, in 1609. 4 prominent English language international law textbooks, quote, present Grotius as the one who finally liberated international law from theology, when in fact his approach to international law was unabashedly theological. There's the reference to William George. 5, Grotius predates Darwin in The Origin of Species by means of natural selection, which was published in 1859, and there we go. 6, Introduction to Natural Selection recast the character of natural law, and Darwin even sees this, as I've discovered this in his book, The Descent of Man in 1871. He's saying, if this is applied to the operation of society, it will be horrible. So in his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses this biological striving and seeking self and self-interest, Matthew chapters 5 to 7. Other scriptures affirm this through its theme of justice and preferential treatment of the poor. 8, the antithesis of this sermon of Jesus Christ looks like natural selection. For example, here's one of my antithetical statements. Blessed are the strong, for they will overcome the weak and inhabit the earth. And then 9, divestiture of these teachings, Hebrew and Greek scripture, and other theological and ethical insight has freed an international law to provide the legal basis for allowing and supporting competition and takeovers as the means for achieving success at the expense of the less powerful and powerless, including creatures, soil, land, farms, with whom we share the biosphere. This is a root problem of global and environmental unsustainability. This is the end. Great are the works of the Lord. This is the cover of my little book, and you notice the ice is melting. Great are the works of the Lord. They are pondered by all who delight in them.
Thank you very much, Nick. We've got a few minutes just on its way. Yes.
I read recently in the paper somebody said they didn't know what to do because they were in favour of organic farming, but they'd been told that it was, in terms of carbon footprint, more efficient to farm intensively than it was to farm organically. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I didn't get quite the full question, but I think I've got the sense of it. When you look at the literature, particularly at Jules Preddy's work and also the work of Miguel Altieri of the University of California, Berkeley, what you discover is that organic farming, even as it is currently certified in practice, is absolutely superior by pretty much on every count. If that is replaced with eco-agriculture, it'll be about the same, but what these people who are scholars in this area are proposing is that we make a shift to what is called agricultural ecology, or agroecology. Heifer Project International, which is one of our large NGOs in this area, has shifted its entire program over to agricultural ecology. In other words, a farm is an ecological project. It's not an agricultural project to which you apply ecological principles. It is ecology. And what we do there is to work within, as Blake shows us in this diagram, within the ecosystem, within the biosphere completely. And so I hope that gets at it.
Okay, Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I am. We have no questions at this point.
Yeah, no questions. We'll have one from here. Down 3 rows in the front, Hilary, sorry. We get lots of exercise there, so thank you very much.
Thanks. Just to follow your 10 points.
Yes.
I think in practice, it's not the secularization of law, but also the liberal economics has taken over the law in the form of the World Trade Organization. And my question is that what do you think of internalizing the external costs? For example, charging the son that sells the orange 11p, in addition to the 10p the 20p that he has to pay to buy the orange in the first place.
In terms of internalizing external costs, it's very important to read Daniel W. Brownlee, because what he's done is do an extensive economic analysis, and he shows that this is a backwards approach to dealing with the ecological problem at hand, and it simply is transforming our problem into another economic exercise for the universities and for economists. But he does maintain that this will help economics professors get tenure.
I know there's going to be lots more questions, but perhaps you can come to Carl during the lunch break and address your questions to him personally. Just let's thank Carl for a great talk.